Yes, indeed. Canada, as a nation, has hit 100,000 EVs on the road as of just recently. Absolutely. So it's been a long slug, but we've reached that goal. Initially, it took just about under 10 years, and they're saying that, of course, now the growth rate is going to rocket, they believe, based on what they've seen to this point. So it's going to grow exponentially from here on out if all things remain the same. What I wanted to do is bring up this chart that's showing the Q1 of 2017, 2018, and 2019 in Canada as a whole. But what I wanted to draw your attention to is the different colored spots. So in 2017, the first lower bar, you can see British Columbia is in green on the bottom, Ontario in blue in the center, and Quebec on top in yellow. And then there's a very thin slice. Yeah. That's all the other provinces combined.
It's just Prince Edward Island, isn't it?
Right. Yeah. So this amount is from 1 year to the next to 2018 in the center, you'll see that Ontario jumped up, Quebec jumped up, and BC not as much, jumped up a little bit. And then finally in 2019, Quebec is way on top. Ontario has shrunk back, and BC has grown double. And what this is all contributing, or what contributes to these wild swings over the year? Incentives. Mm. Every province has changed the incentives from 1 year to the next, different amounts, greater amounts, less amounts, and it affects the purchase of EVs wildly. When I got my Volt and Tesla in the 2018 era, there was a $14,000 incentive for each of the cars. Now that incentive disappeared for the province, and we now have a $5,000 federal incentive. So and that just happened in May. So basically, for an entire year, Ontario stopped buying EVs because there was zero incentive. You can see those other provinces, just a sliver at the top of each of those charts. None of them are buying at all, like very small amounts, because none of the other provinces had an incentive until this year in May. So with the swing in incentives, so goes the sale of EVs to this point in Canada. And I believe largely in other countries as well. Certainly incentives at this point, because of EVs being quite a bit more than a regular comparable gas car, incentives talk, and they continue to do so. So interesting to see that. But of course, BC and Quebec, they push further and further. They have higher incentives than they have higher sales. And that is something that, we can't be incentives all the time, but there has to be some sort of a level playing field if you want level sales. And that's something that the governments haven't learned yet. It's all over the board at this point, and people are just tracking those incentives at this point as to what they're buying or what they're not buying. So.
And then you just got not just new tech, or not just the expensive, but it's also new tech. So they've got to wrap their heads around it, and people are willing to take a chance if they can see that it's cheaper up front, and then they start to do the math on it, and they're like, well, this might work for me. So exactly. even the little Mitsubishi i or iMEV, or depending on what they called it under where you are, it makes a difference. I mean, that's a little shoebox car. It costs not very much, but it does cost more than any other comparable shoebox.
Right.
And you can't even get it anymore.
That too.
I mean, Doug Ford. Oh. Mm-hmm. What I thought was interesting was that the provinces did grow. The other provinces, it looked like it was significant growth in this year. Mm-hmm. Seeing Quebec grow so much was pretty crazy. And then again, watching Ontario shrink. Is that just Doug Ford, or is that other
that's
things?
That's the incentive disappearing completely in Ontario.
Yeah.
That's what happened.
So the only people buying are enthusiasts.
That's right. That's right.
And I mean, we can have the discussion of why do we have to pay people to buy these cars? And the reason for that is because they pollute less than other things. And this is new technology that we're trying to get people to adopt.
Yeah, or stop subsidizing the gas industry as they currently do, and put everyone on the playing field that's even. And there will be a switch naturally because, of course, the gas prices will go up because subsidies disappeared for them.
Yep. Don't give them a free pass when they have a spill or a pipe leakage or whatever other catastrophe they cause this year.
And Russell brings up a point that maybe we had considered in the past. It just struck me as something new, is to switch the argument that the government is not paying you to buy an electric vehicle. They're paying you to take a gas guzzler off the road.
Well, here's the crazy thing in Ontario is that we produce a lot of power that, similar to Quebec, that is either hydroelectric or nuclear, and there's also a mix of renewables and even a smaller mix of gas. So we've got this big mix. What we do is that overnight we produce way more than we need because, of course, you can't turn off nukes. They got to produce all the time. And we end up giving or paying others to take our excess power overnight. So the Ontario Hydro Board got together and said, how can we stop this? How can we make it better? Because we're actually paying people to take our power at night. Why don't we find a way to put the power in batteries overnight? And hey, why don't we use electric cars? Everyone charges them up at night when they're sleeping. They become the battery. We don't have to pay them to take it. In fact, they pay us a little bit to use the electricity, and it just flips. And we've got ourselves a sustainable solution. So that all works great with one government, but when another government comes in and have different agenda, it all switches on its head, and of course it falls apart. So then you've got people that are not putting the incentive to get people to buy the cars to take the power overnight. You've got less people doing that, and then you start slipping the other way again. So we were on the right road, and then we've changed. So hopefully we've had enough momentum that over the next little while, more people will switch. And maybe whenever the government comes in shortly, we'll be able to switch back again. So get us back on track.
So Mark, what is the energy producer doing? I mean, are they back to paying people to take the energy?
Yeah. They will. There's less that they have to pay to get rid of, but that's still going on. To some extent, it was starting to switch. They could actually see it switching over time. Over the last 4 years, they could see the momentum that was gaining. But at this point, as you saw in the graph, momentum halved almost immediately.
Right. I'm just thinking of the electricity producer's bottom line.
The electricity producer is the government of Ontario.
Oh, right. Okay.
So it is a government agency.
So they basically reduced I don't know. I just think the whole going backwards to where they were just seems absolutely counterintuitive.
It does. They had such a great plan.
That happens, Tony.
Yeah, it does when a different mindset comes into power.
Yeah.